Welcome to this peaceful afternoon walk through Venice. Tonight, you'll wander with me through one of the world's most enchanting cities, as the soft light of afternoon gives way to the gentle glow of evening. Let yourself relax completely as we explore together. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just breathe deeply, settle into comfort, and let the soothing sights and sounds of Venice carry you into restful sleep. We begin our journey at a charming coffee house in Cannaregio, one of Venice's 6 historic districts. This is the perfect place to start our walk, to pause for a moment and prepare for the beauty that awaits in this city built entirely on water. I'm sitting at a small round table outside a traditional Venetian coffee bar, tucked into a quiet corner near the Fondamenta della Misericordia. The table is marble-topped, its surface cool and smooth under my hands, with elegant wrought-iron legs painted a deep forest green. 2 matching chairs accompany it, their seats woven with cane in the traditional style. The coffee house itself is a gem of old Venice. Its facade is painted a warm apricot colour with dark wooden shutters framing the windows. Above the door, a hand-painted sign shows the establishment's name in elegant script, the letters slightly faded by time and weather. Through the open door, I can see the interior, a long marble-topped bar, an impressive brass espresso machine that gleams like gold, and shelves lined with bottles and jars. The barista, an older man with silver hair and a crisp white apron, moves behind the bar with the practiced efficiency of decades. He pulls shots of espresso, froths milk for cappuccinos, and exchanges friendly words with regular customers who stop by. The campo, or square, is perhaps 15 meters across, bordered by buildings in shades of pale yellow and faded rose. The facades rise 3 and 4 stories high, their plaster aged and textured in ways that only centuries can create. Looking up, I notice the windows. Each one is different. Some have wooden shutters painted in deep forest green, slightly faded by the salt air and Mediterranean sun. Others feature ornate iron railings where small terracotta pots overflow with geraniums in brilliant red and soft pink. A few windows are partially open, their white lace curtains moving ever so slightly in the gentle breeze that travels through the narrow streets. In the center of this campo stands an old stone wellhead, carved from Istrian stone that has turned a soft grey with age. These wells, called Vere da Pozzo, once provided fresh water to the community, an engineering marvel in a city surrounded by salt water. Venice developed an ingenious system where rainwater was collected from rooftops and filtered through sand before being stored in underground cisterns. This one is cylindrical, about waist-high, with delicate carvings worn smooth by countless hands that have touched it over the years. I can just make out a floral pattern, perhaps roses or acanthus leaves, decorating its surface. I take another sip of my espresso, savouring the moment, the quiet beauty of this place. A few pigeons peck lazily at the ground nearby, their heads bobbing in that peculiar rhythmic way that pigeons have. An elderly woman passes through the campo with a small wire-haired terrier on a leash. The little dog spots the pigeons and gives an excited yip, his stubby tail wagging furiously. But the woman gently guides him along with an affectionate, "Vieni, Tito, come." She offers me a warm smile and a buonasera as they pass by. the little dog trotting obediently at her side. I finish my coffee, setting the empty cup down with a soft clink against the saucer. It's time to begin my walk through this magical city. I stand, leaving a few euros on the table, and the barista waves from inside the coffee house, calling out a friendly "Arrivederci." I begin my journey across the campo, my footsteps making a soft sound against the worn stones. The afternoon is peaceful here, with only distant sounds drifting over the rooftops. Somewhere church bells ring the hour, their deep tones resonating through the air. Venice has over 200 bell towers, each with its own distinctive voice that has marked time for centuries. The bells don't ring in a hurried way, but with a slow, measured rhythm that seems to encourage everything to move just a little more slowly. Leaving the campo, I enter a narrow street called a calli. The buildings on either side rise so close together that they almost seem to touch overhead. The space between them creates a corridor of cool shadow, a welcome relief from the sun-warmed stones of the square. The walls here are a beautiful faded yellow, with darker patches where the plaster has worn away over time, revealing older layers of brick and stone beneath. The calli is perhaps only 1.5 meters wide. As I walk, I can reach out and touch both walls if I extend my arms. The surfaces are cool and slightly rough under my fingertips, textured with age and the salt air that permeates everything in Venice. Small metal rings are embedded in some walls, ancient mooring points from centuries ago when these narrow streets were canals before being filled in. Venice was once laced with even more waterways than exist today, but many were filled in during the 1800s to create more pedestrian paths. Above me, I notice something magical. The buildings on either side are connected by a covered passageway, called a sottoportego. Someone has their washing hung out here, white sheets and colourful clothing suspended on lines that crisscross the narrow space above. The fabric moves gently, creating slowly shifting patterns of light and shadow on the walls below. The windows here are fascinating. Many have their shutters closed against the afternoon heat, but others remain open, offering glimpses into Venetian life. Through one window, I can see the corner of a room painted in pale blue, with an ornate mirror catching fragments of light. Through another, there's a kitchen where copper pots hang from hooks on the wall, their burnished surfaces glowing warmly. Some windows feature beautiful examples of Venetian Gothic architecture. The frames are carved in white stone, creating delicate pointed arches reminiscent of church architecture. These bifour and trifour windows, divided by slender columns, are often adorned with quatrefoil or trefoil patterns, like frozen stone lace against the coloured plaster of the walls. This style flourished in Venice during the 14th and 15th centuries, when the Republic was at the height of its power as a maritime empire. I pause to examine a particularly beautiful doorway. The wooden door itself is painted a deep burgundy red, its paint cracked and peeling in places to reveal layers of earlier colours beneath. The doorframe is made of white Istrian stone, carved with a simple but elegant pattern of leaves and vines. This stone, quarried from across the Adriatic in what is now Croatia, was the primary building material for Venice's most important structures. Above the door there's a mascaron, a decorative stone face that might represent a lion, or perhaps a mythological figure. Its features have been softened by weather and time, giving it a gentle, almost dreamlike quality. The calli begins to slope slightly downward, and I can hear something new now, the gentle sound of water. It's not the rushing of a river or the crash of ocean waves, but something softer, more subtle. It's the quiet lapping of canal water against stone foundations, a sound that has defined Venice for over 1,500 years, since refugees first fled to these marshy islands to escape barbarian invasions on the mainland. The narrow street opens suddenly onto a small canal, and the view takes my breath away. The waterway stretches perhaps 10 meters across, bordered on both sides by buildings that rise directly from the water. Their foundations disappear into the green-tinged depths, creating the illusion that these structures are floating. In a sense, they are, beneath the water. Millions of wooden pilings driven into the mud support these buildings, creating an underwater forest of larch and oak that has remained preserved by the water for centuries. The canal water is remarkably still in this quiet spot. Its surface acts like a mirror, reflecting the buildings, the sky, the occasional passing cloud. The reflection is so perfect that it's almost difficult to tell where reality ends and reflection begins. The colours are doubled, deepened. The warm ochre of the buildings becomes even richer in the water, the blue of the sky more intense. A small stone bridge arches over the canal just a few meters to my left. These bridges, called ponti, are everywhere in Venice, connecting the city's 118 islands. There are over 400 bridges in Venice, each one a small work of engineering and art. This particular bridge is modest, with simple stone balustrades worn smooth by countless hands. 3 steps lead up to the crest, then 3 more down to the other side. I walk towards the bridge, noticing how the light plays on the water below. The late afternoon sun creates patterns of gold and amber on the surface, broken occasionally by tiny ripples when a breeze passes through. Along the waterline of the buildings, I can see a band of darker stone and brick, stained green and brown with algae, and the constant presence of water. This tidal mark tells the story of the Acqua Alta, the high waters that periodically flood the city. Venice has always lived in intimate relationship with the sea, though in recent decades these floods have become more frequent. Climbing the bridge steps, I run my hand along the cool stone balustrade. The stone is incredibly smooth, polished by centuries of touch. From this vantage point at the bridge's crest, I have a better view down the length of the canal. In one direction, the waterway extends perhaps 50 meters before turning to the left, disappearing between buildings. The architecture creates a beautiful corridor, the buildings on each side leaning slightly inward, as if sharing secrets across the water. Plants grow from some of the windows and balconies, cascading greenery that softens the stone and plaster. I can see ivy, jasmine, and what might be wisteria, though the flowers have finished blooming for the season. In the other direction, the canal is shorter, opening after about 30 meters into a wider waterway. I can just see the edge of what appears to be a larger building there, perhaps a palazzo with more elaborate decoration. At the base of the bridge, a gondola is moored to a striped wooden pole, the kind called paline, or pali. The gondola rocks gently in its place, its black hull gleaming in the sunlight. The vessel is a masterpiece of craftsmanship. Its asymmetrical design, longer on one side than the other to compensate for the gondoliers rowing on one side, speaks to centuries of refined engineering. A gondola is over 11 meters long, weighs about 600 kilograms, and requires nearly 500 hours of skilled labor to construct. The metal ornament at the prow, the ferro, catches the light. This distinctive piece of metalwork serves both a practical purpose as a counterweight and a symbolic one. Its shape represents the Doge's ceremonial hat, while its 6 forward-facing prongs symbolize the 6 districts of Venice: Cannaregio, Castello, Dorsoduro, San Marco, San Polo, and Santa Croce, and the single rear-facing prong represents the island of Giudecca. The law that all gondolas must be painted black dates back to 1562, when the government decreed it to prevent ostentatious displays of wealth. From the bridge, I descend into the Castello district, one of the largest and most diverse areas of Venice. Castello, whose name means castle, takes its name from a fortress that once stood here in ancient times. The path leads me along a fondamenta, a walkway that runs beside a canal. Unlike the narrow calle I was in before, this walkway is perhaps 3 meters wide, offering space to stroll comfortably alongside the water. The buildings here are somewhat taller, rising 4 and sometimes 5 stories. Many show the typical Venetian color palette: warm terracotta, dusty rose, golden yellow, and the occasional pale green. The plaster surfaces are weathered in beautiful ways, with patches where you can see multiple layers of different colored paints from different eras, creating an unintentional but stunning patchwork. I walk slowly, taking in every detail. On my right, the canal stretches alongside me, its waters darker now as the buildings cast long shadows. On my left, the ground floors of buildings feature a mixture of purposes. Some are clearly residential, with sturdy wooden doors painted in various colors. I run my hand along the wall as I walk, feeling the texture of the weathered plaster, cool and slightly rough under my fingertips. In some places, the surface is smooth, where countless hands have touched it over the years. In others, it's more rough and crumbling, the texture telling stories of age and weather. I touch one of the wooden doors in passing. The surface is warm from the afternoon sun it absorbed earlier, and the paint feels slightly raised where it has cracked over time, creating tiny ridges under my palm. The wood beneath is solid and heavy, built to last centuries. Some doorways have stone thresholds worn into gentle curves by the passage of countless feet. I step on one, feeling how smooth it is, polished by time until it's almost slippery. The stone has a slight depression in the center where foot traffic has been heaviest, turning the threshold into a shallow bowl. Other doorways are workshops or studios, their windows revealing glimpses of artisans at work. Through one window, I can see a mask maker's studio, filled with the white plaster forms used to create Venice's famous carnival masks. The walls are covered with finished pieces, elaborate designs featuring peacock feathers, gold leaf, and delicate paintings. The artist inside, an older man with white hair and glasses perched on his nose, bends over a workbench, carefully applying tiny details to a half-completed mask. Venice's carnival tradition dates back to 1162, and the masks allowed people of different social classes to mingle anonymously during the festivities. Further along, another workshop displays beautiful marbled paper, the traditional craft known as carta marmorizzata, sheets of paper in swirling patterns of blue, gold, red, and green hang in the window, each one unique. The patterns seem to flow like liquid, frozen in the moment of their creation. This craft came to Venice from the Ottoman Empire in the 15th century and flourished here, where it was used to create end papers for the city's fine books. Ahead, I notice a larger opening in the buildings, and as I approach, I realize it's a gondola workshop called a squiro. These traditional boatyards are rare treasures in Venice, places where the ancient craft of gondola making continues. At the height of the Republic's power, there were 10,000 gondolas in Venice. Today, there are only about 400, and fewer than 10 squarei remain. The workshop is open to the canal, allowing boats to be floated in and out. Inside, I can see the wooden ribbed skeleton of a gondola in progress, looking almost like the hull of a ship under construction. The wood is fresh and pale, not yet treated with the black paint that all gondolas wear. The air here carries the rich scent of wood and varnish. Planks of different woods are stacked carefully against one wall. A true gondola uses 8 different types of wood, each chosen for specific properties. Oak for the hull framework, larch for the planking, cherry for the interior trim, elm for the oarlocks. The design has remained essentially unchanged for centuries, refined through generations of trial and error. The craftsman, called squararoli, must know precisely how each wood will behave, how it will flex and respond to the water. An elderly craftsman works on shaping a piece of wood with a hand plane, the tool making a rhythmic scraping sound as thin curls of wood fall away. He works with complete concentration, his movements practiced and sure. This is knowledge passed down through generations, techniques that can't be learned from books, but only through years of patient apprenticeship. To become a master gondola builder can take a lifetime. I continue my walk, the light beginning to shift as the afternoon moves toward evening. The sun is lower now, its light becoming warmer, more golden. It streams down the cross streets that intersect this fondamenta, creating dramatic shafts of light that illuminate floating particles of dust and the occasional bit of plant down drifting on the air. A cat appears from a doorway, a lean orange tabby that regards me with calm green eyes, before sitting down to wash its paw with great concentration. Cats are a common sight in Venice. Unofficial residents who navigate the city with the confidence of locals. This one seems entirely unconcerned with my presence, continuing its grooming as I pass. The buildings along this stretch show more variety in their details. One has a balcony with an ornate wrought iron railing, painted white, where pots of herbs grow in profusion. I can identify basil by its distinctive leaves, and what might be rosemary, its woody stems trailing over the edge of the pot. The scent of the herbs carries faintly on the air. Another building features a beautiful example of a Venetian altana, a wooden rooftop terrace. These platforms, unique to Venice, were traditionally used by women to bleach their hair in the sun, creating the famous Titian blonde colour seen in Renaissance paintings. The women would wear special crownless hats to protect their faces, while their hair spread over the wooden slats to catch the sun. The wooden slats of this altana are weathered to a silvery grey, and small potted plants line its edges. The fondamenta leads me to a small campo dominated by a church. This is San Francesco della Vigna, its white Istrian stone facade rising majestically against the deepening blue of the sky. The church is a masterpiece of Renaissance architecture, designed in part by the great architect Jacopo Sansovino and completed with a facade by Andrea Palladio in 1572. Its classical proportions create a sense of perfect harmony. The facade features four massive Corinthian columns supporting a triangular pediment. The white stone is carved with incredible precision, the acanthus leaves of the column capitals so detailed they almost seem organic, as if they might grow and unfurl at any moment. The church doors are bronze, decorated with panels depicting scenes from the life of St. Francis. The church was built on the site where, according to legend, an angel appeared to St. Mark and told him Venice would become a great city. I crossed the campo toward the church, my footsteps echoing slightly in the open space. The square is paved with flagstones in a pattern that creates subtle variations in colour and texture. Here and there, grass has found a way to grow between the stones, tiny patches of green life persistent despite the urban setting. The church is open, and I step inside, passing from the warm evening light into cool, dim interior space. The temperature drops immediately, and my eyes need a moment to adjust to the lower light. The interior is vast and peaceful. The nave stretches ahead, lined with columns that create side aisles. The ceiling rises high above, vaulted and decorated with frescoes whose colours have mellowed to soft earth tones over the centuries. The air smells of old stone, candle wax and incense, a scent that seems universal to ancient churches. Light filters through stained glass windows, creating pools of coloured illumination on the stone floor. Blues, reds and golds shift and overlap, forming patterns that change subtly as I watch. A few candles flicker in a side chapel, their small flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. I sit for a moment on one of the wooden pews, simply breathing in the stillness. The church is nearly empty at this hour. An elderly woman kneels in prayer near the altar, her head bowed. The silence is profound, broken only by the distant sound of my own breathing and the occasional creak of old wood settling. Leaving the church, I emerge back into the campo, which is now bathed in the rich, golden light of late afternoon. The sun is perhaps an hour from setting, and its rays slant across the square at an acute angle, making everything seem to glow from within. A small cafe occupies one corner of the campo. Several small round tables sit outside, each with 2 or 3 chairs. At one table, a couple sits sharing a glass of wine, speaking quietly to each other. At another, a man reads a book, occasionally pausing to take a sip from a small cup of espresso. The cafe's exterior is painted a warm cream colour, with dark green trim around the windows and door. Through the window I can see the interior, a long bar with a gleaming espresso machine, shelves lined with bottles, a glass case displaying pastries and small sandwiches called tramezzini. I decide to continue my walk, leaving the campo by a different calle than the one I entered by. This street is slightly wider, perhaps 2 meters across, and curves gently to the right. The buildings here are predominantly pink and coral-coloured, their plaster showing the beautiful weathered quality that makes Venice so photogenic. Ahead, I notice a different kind of building. This is a scuola, one of the confraternity buildings that played such an important role in Venetian life for centuries. These weren't schools in the educational sense, but rather charitable and religious organizations, often organized around specific professions or national groups. At one time, there were hundreds of schools in Venice, providing social services, care for the sick, and support for their members. This particular scuola is smaller than the famous Grand Scuole, like the Scuola Grande di San Rocco, but beautiful nonetheless. Its facade is more ornate than the residential buildings around it, decorated with carved stone reliefs depicting religious scenes. Above the door, a semicircular lunette contains a sculpture of the Madonna and Child, the stone carved with such delicacy that the figures seem almost to breathe. The building's windows are tall and arched, their proportions suggesting the Gothic style. Stone tracery divides each window into smaller sections, creating lace-like patterns. Some of the windows contain old glass, their panes slightly uneven, causing the light passing through them to ripple and distort in interesting ways. I continue past the scuola, entering an area that feels more residential and intimate. The buildings here are slightly lower, mostly 3 stories, creating a more human scale. Laundry hangs from many windows, shirts and sheets and towels suspended on lines that stretch across the narrow street. The clothing moves gently in the breeze, creating a sort of colourful, domestic sky above the calli. Through a partially open gate, I catch a glimpse of something unexpected: a garden. Private gardens are rare and precious in Venice, where space is at such a premium. I pause to look through the iron bars of the gate. The garden is small, perhaps 10 meters square, but beautifully maintained. A gravel path winds between raised beds where vegetables grow. I can see the large leaves of zucchini plants, the climbing tendrils of bean vines on wooden poles, the feathery tops of carrots. Flowers border the vegetable beds, adding splashes of colour: yellow marigolds, purple petunias, white impatiens glowing in the shade. At the back of the garden stands a small marble statue, weathered and covered with lichen, representing a classical figure, perhaps Apollo or Mercury. Water trickles from a shell the figure holds, feeding a tiny pool at its base where water plants float on the surface. A lemon tree grows in a large terracotta pot, its glossy green leaves dark and healthy, several bright yellow fruits visible among the foliage. The scent of lemon and earth and growing things drifts through the gate, fresh and life-affirming in the midst of all this stone and water. Venice has always had a relationship with gardens. Even the name Giardini, one of the city's districts, means gardens. The calli begins to widen, and the quality of light ahead suggests open space. I emerge onto the Grand Canal, Venice's main waterway, and the view is spectacular. The canal here is perhaps 60 meters across, a wide ribbon of green-tinted water that curves away in both directions. This great S-shaped waterway divides Venice in two and has been the city's main thoroughfare for over 1,000 years. Traffic on the water is moderate at this hour. Vaporetti, the public water buses, chug past with loads of passengers. Water taxis zip by, their wooden hulls cutting sharp wakes. The occasional gondola glides past, propelled by a gondolier in traditional striped shirt. I'm standing at a Vaporetto stop, a wooden platform that floats on the water. tethered to pilings. The platform rocks very gently with the wake from passing boats, a motion so subtle it's almost soothing. A covered waiting area provides shelter from sun and rain, its roof supported by wooden posts, painted in the blue and white stripes that mark official Venice structures. Across the canal, palazzi line the opposite bank, creating one of the most beautiful urban waterfronts in the world. These aren't just buildings. They're architectural masterpieces spanning centuries of Venetian wealth and artistic achievement. The nearest palazzo is a perfect example of Venetian Gothic style. Its facade is painted a warm rose colour, with 3 levels of windows, each level slightly different from the others. The ground floor windows are relatively simple, barred against the water with iron grills. The first floor, the piano nobile where the main living spaces were located, features magnificent quatrefoil windows, their stone tracery creating delicate patterns. The top floor has smaller, simpler openings. The most striking feature is the balcony that runs the length of the first floor. Stone columns create a loggia, an open gallery where the palazzo's residents could sit and watch the life of the canal. The columns are slender and elegant, topped with carved capitals featuring acanthus leaves and other botanical motifs. The balustrade between the columns is pierced stone, creating lace-like patterns. Next to this Gothic palazzo stands a Renaissance building, its style completely different. Here the emphasis is on classical proportions and symmetry. The facade is divided into clear horizontal bands by stone cornices. Windows are regularly spaced, topped with triangular pediments alternating with curved pediments. The overall effect is one of order and mathematical harmony. The building is painted a pale yellow with architectural details picked out in white stone. At the water level, a striped mooring pole marks the private boat entrance. The water gate, an arched opening large enough to admit a gondola, would once have allowed visitors to enter the palazzo directly from their boats, ascending an internal water staircase to the main floors above. In medieval and Renaissance Venice, the Grand Canal was the equivalent of a grand boulevard, and these water entrances were the front doors through which important guests arrived. A vaporetto approaches the stop, and I decide to board it for the next part of my journey. The boat slows and crew members throw ropes to secure it to the floating platform. A gate in the boat's side opens and passengers begin to disembark. I step aboard, finding a spot near the rail where I can watch the canal. The vaporetto is painted in the city's colours, white with blue trim, and its interior is simple and functional. Rows of bench seats, vertical poles for standing passengers to hold, large windows that can be opened in good weather. The vaporetto system, established in its modern form in the early 1900s, is the lifeline of Venice, connecting all parts of the city. The boat's engine rumbles to life, and we pull away from the stop. The movement is smooth, and soon we're gliding down the Grand Canal, the water parting before our bow and closing again in our wake. From this vantage point on the water, Venice reveals itself in a completely different way. The palazzi that seemed impressive from the shore become even more magnificent. I can see details that weren't visible from an angle. The underside of balconies decorated with carved wooden brackets, hidden water gates between buildings, roof gardens and altanas perched atop buildings like secret worlds. The late afternoon light is perfect, warm and golden, turning the water into a moving sheet of amber and bronze. Every ripple catches the light, creating a constantly shifting pattern. Reflections of buildings waver on the water's surface, colours blurring and blending in beautiful ways. We pass under the Rialto Bridge, one of Venice's most iconic structures. The bridge is crowded with tourists and locals, their figures silhouetted against the sky as we pass beneath the single stone arch. The underside of the bridge is massive and impressive, the stonework precisely fitted, the arch curve graceful and strong. This bridge, designed by Antonio da Ponte and completed in 1591, replaced earlier wooden bridges that had repeatedly collapsed. For nearly 300 years, this was the only bridge spanning the Grand Canal. Emerging from under the bridge, the canal opens up even wider. Here, the palazzi become grander, more ornate. These were the showplaces of the wealthiest Venetian families, built to impress and intimidate in equal measure. I spot the Ca' d'Oro, the House of Gold, on the right bank. This palazzo is considered the finest example of Venetian Gothic architecture on the Grand Canal. Its facade is an intricate lacework of stone, with loggias, balconies, and windows creating a pattern of solid and void. The building got its name from the gold leaf that once decorated much of its facade, though little of that gilding remains today. Still, in this light, the white stone seems to glow with an inner warmth. The Vaporetto continues and we pass the Ca' Foscari, a massive Gothic palazzo now part of the university. Students sit on the steps leading down to the water, books spread around them, some studying, others just enjoying the evening. The building's facade is grand and imposing, with large windows and a roofline decorated with crenellations like a castle. Built in 1453 for Doge Francesco Foscari, it represents the power and wealth that Venice commanded at the height of the Renaissance. On the left bank, we approach the Rialto market area. Even from the water, I can sense the energy of this district. The buildings here are less ornate, more functional, but no less interesting. This has been a market area for 1,000 years, where farmers and fishermen brought their goods to sell. Venice, with no land to farm, has always depended on the sea and on trade for its sustenance. Though it's late in the day and the main market has closed, I can still see the covered arcades where vendors set up their stalls. The Pescaria, the fish market, is housed in a beautiful Gothic building with an open ground floor and elegant, pointed arches. Above, a roof terrace provides a sheltered space. The Vaporetto slows for another stop, and I decide to disembark here. I want to explore this area on foot, to walk through streets that have been commercial centres for centuries. Stepping off the Vaporetto, I find myself at the San Silvestro stop. The fondamenta here is wide and busy with people heading home from work or out for the evening. The atmosphere is lively but not hectic, a pleasant urban energy. As I walk toward the market area, the most wonderful aromas begin to reach me. From an open doorway comes the unmistakable scent of garlic and olive oil, heating in a pan, the foundation of so many Italian dishes. It's a warm, welcoming smell that makes my stomach remind me it's approaching dinner time. I pass a small trattoria with its door propped open to the cool evening air. Inside, I can see diners at small tables covered in red checkered cloths. The scent that emerges is incredible, tomatoes slowly simmering with basil and oregano, creating the rich aroma of fresh marinara sauce. There's the yeasty smell of baking bread, and underneath it all, the briny scent of fresh seafood. A waiter appears in the doorway carrying 2 plates, and I catch a glimpse of the dishes: spaghetti alle vongole, pasta with clams, the tiny shells still in place, glistening with olive oil and white wine sauce, scattered with fresh parsley. The sight and smell are so tempting that I pause for a moment, breathing it in. Further along, I pass a bakery, a panificio, its window still displaying a few remaining items from the day. The smell of baking bread mingles with something sweet, perhaps a sfogliatella, the layered pastry that glistens with sugar. Through the window, I can see racks of bread, crusty loaves dusted with flour, plaited wreaths of golden crust, flat focaccia dimpled and topped with rosemary and coarse salt. I enter a covered passage called the Ruga degli Orefici, once the street of goldsmiths. Though the goldsmiths are long gone, the street retains its commercial character. Small shops line both sides, their windows displaying everything from fine Venetian glass to tourist souvenirs, from fresh pasta to fine wines. Here the aromas shift and blend. A delicatessen has its door open, and the smell of cured meats and aged cheeses drifts out. Prosciutto, salami, the sharp tang of aged Parmigiano Reggiano. Next door, a wine shop offers samples, and I can smell the complex bouquet of aged wine, fruity and earthy and slightly sweet. From a small pasta shop, the scent of fresh egg pasta fills the air, rich and comforting. Through the window, I can see sheets of pasta hanging on wooden racks and trays of filled ravioli and tortellini, each one hand-shaped, their edges crimped with care. An elderly woman in an apron works behind the counter, her hands moving with the speed and precision of someone who has made pasta every day for 60 years. The passage is covered with a wooden roof, creating a tunnel-like space that's dim and cool, but filled with these wonderful food aromas that seem to layer and combine into a symphony of scent. Light filters in from the sides and from gaps in the roof, creating interesting patterns on the worn stone floor. The sound of footsteps echoes slightly in this enclosed space, mixing with the murmur of conversation from shoppers and the occasional call of vendors. I emerge from the covered street into a small campo near the fish market. The space still carries the scent of the sea, though the vendors have long since packed up for the day. A few fish scales catch the light on the wet pavement, small iridescent flecks of silver and blue. The stone is still damp from where the vendors hose down their stalls, and the clean wet smell mingles with the salt sea aroma. The light is changing noticeably now as evening approaches. The sun has dropped lower, and while the sky above remains blue, it's beginning to show hints of pink and orange on the horizon. The buildings reflect this changing light, their colours seeming to intensify. I leave the market area and wander into the maze of streets in the San Polo district. Here, away from the Grand Canal and the market, the city becomes quieter again, more residential. The streets are narrower, the buildings closer together, creating an intimate atmosphere. I turn a corner and nearly collide with a man coming the other way, carrying a long loaf of bread wrapped in paper. "Scusi, scusi," we both say at the same time, then laugh. He's perhaps in his 50s, wearing a light jacket and carrying a canvas shopping bag over one shoulder. The bread he's carrying is still warm. I can see steam escaping from one end of the paper wrapping, and the most incredible aroma surrounds him. It's fresh baked bread, the crust still crackling, the interior soft and airy. The smell is yeasty and warm, with that slightly sweet, nutty aroma that only bread baked in a wood-fired oven can achieve. There's a hint of olive oil in the dough, I think, and perhaps a touch of rosemary. "You are walking to Campo San Polo?" he asks in English, noting my slightly uncertain stance at the intersection. "I was thinking of going that way." "Yes," I reply. "Good choice. This way, this way." He gestures down the calle to the left. "And if you want bread like this," he holds up his loaf proudly, "there is a forno, a bakery, 2 streets over. Best bread in Venice, but don't tell my wife. She thinks I buy it at the supermarket." He gives me a conspiratorial wink and detailed directions to the bakery, speaking with his hands as much as his words, then continues on his way, calling back, "Buona passeggiata, good walk." I continue in the direction he suggested, and sure enough, 2 streets over, I find the bakery. It's a tiny place, barely more than a hole in the wall, with a small window display and a doorway. But oh, the smell! It pours out into the street, warm and inviting. Not just bread, but also something sweet, perhaps bussolai, the traditional Venetian butter cookies shaped into rings. Through the window I can see the baker, his face flushed from the heat of the ovens, pulling out a tray of golden rolls with a long, wooden paddle. Steam rises from them, and even from outside I can see how perfectly golden they are, their tops shiny with egg wash and sprinkled with sesame seeds. A street musician sits on a small bridge just ahead, playing a guitar. The music is soft, melancholic, a Spanish-influenced piece that seems perfect for this time of day. A few coins lie in an open guitar case at his feet, but he doesn't seem concerned with earning money. He plays for himself, his eyes closed, his fingers moving over the strings with practiced ease. I pause to listen, standing at a respectful distance. Other passers-by slow down too, drawn by the music. For a few moments, a small group of strangers stands together in silence, united by the simple beauty of the guitar melody, echoing off the ancient walls. Continuing on, I find myself gradually moving toward the San Marco district, the historic center of Venetian power and ceremony. The streets here begin to widen slightly, and the buildings show more uniformity in their grandeur. This was the administrative and religious heart of the Republic, and everything here speaks of authority and importance. For over 1,000 years, from 697 until Napoleon's conquest in 1797, Venice was an independent republic, governed by the Doge and various councils, one of the longest-lasting republics in human history. I emerge into a small campo with a beautiful Renaissance wellhead at its center. This one is more ornate than others I've seen, carved with intricate patterns of leaves and flowers, probably dating from the 16th century. The stone has a warm tone in the evening light, almost honey-coloured. I run my hand over its surface. The carvings are deep and precise, the stone cool to the touch despite the warmth of the day. In the grooves of the carving, I can feel where water has worn the stone, smooth over centuries. Around the Campo, buildings display the elegant proportions of the Renaissance. Regular window spacing, balanced facades, classical details like pilasters and cornices. Everything speaks of order, harmony, proportion. These were the ideals of the Renaissance, expressed in stone and plaster. At one window on the second floor, someone is tending to their window box. An elderly man with white hair leans out carefully, deadheading geraniums and pinching off yellowed leaves. As he works, he's humming softly to himself. Some old melody I don't recognize, but that sounds like it might be a folk song. He notices me watching and waves cheerfully, calling out, "Bella sera!" Beautiful evening, before returning to his plants with the tenderness of someone caring for old friends. The flowers in the window box are magnificent up close. The geraniums are a deep, vibrant red, their petals velvety in appearance. Mixed among them are trailing ivy with leaves like small green hands, and what looks like sweet alyssum. Tiny white flowers with a honey-sweet fragrance that I can smell even from street level. The man picks up a small watering can and begins to water the plants, and I can hear the gentle patter of water on soil and leaves. A soft, soothing sound. A wine bar occupies one corner of the Campo, its door open to the evening air. Inside, I can see locals standing at the bar enjoying an aperitivo before dinner. This is the Venetian tradition of ombra, a small glass of wine taken in the late afternoon or early evening. The word means shadow, supposedly originating from the practice of wine vendors following the shadow of the bell tower in Piazza San Marco to keep their wine cool. From inside the wine bar comes the clink of glasses, the murmur of conversation in Venetian dialect, a distinct language that differs significantly from standard Italian, and occasional bursts of laughter. The sound is convivial, warm, the sound of friends and neighbours gathering at the end of the day. I can smell wine, of course, but also the snacks that accompany it. Olives, salted almonds, small pieces of cheese, thin slices of salami. These cicchetti, as they're called in Venice, are the local version of tapas, small bites to accompany drinks. The Campo opens onto a wider street, and ahead I can see a glimpse of Piazza San Marco. Even from here I can sense the space, the openness after so many narrow streets and intimate squares. But first I pass through the Piazzetta, the small square that fronts the lagoon. Two massive granite columns stand here, brought from Constantinople in the 12th century, a testament to Venice's maritime power and its complex relationship with the Byzantine Empire. On top of one stands a statue of Saint Theodore standing on a crocodile. Theodore was Venice's first patron saint before being supplanted by Saint Mark. On the other, the winged lion of Saint Mark, symbol of Venice, surveys the lagoon with bronze serenity. Between these columns, criminals were once executed, and superstitious Venetians still avoid walking between them. I skirt around, approaching the Doge's palace, the Palazzo Ducale. The palace is extraordinary, one of the finest examples of Gothic civil architecture in the world. But this isn't the heavy, fortress-like Gothic of Northern Europe. This is Venetian Gothic, lighter, more delicate, almost seeming to defy gravity. The lower two floors consist of open arcades, creating an effect where the solid upper floor seems to float above empty space. The logic is reversed from typical medieval architecture, which places the heavy elements below and lighter ones above. This daring design has stood for over 600 years. The lowest arcade features robust columns supporting pointed arches. Above this, a more delicate arcade repeats the pattern with slimmer columns and more ornate carving. These two levels of arcades are in white Istrian stone, their surfaces carved with incredible intricacy. Above the arcades, the wall is solid but doesn't feel heavy. It's covered in a pattern of pink and white marble, creating a checkerboard effect. Large quatrefoil windows punctuate the wall at regular intervals, their frames elaborately carved. The proportions are perfect, creating an effect of strength and delicacy combined. This was the seat of the Venetian government for centuries, where the Doge and his councils met to govern a maritime empire that stretched across the Mediterranean. The current building dates primarily from the 14th and 15th centuries, though it incorporates elements from earlier structures. I walk around the palace and enter Piazza San Marco itself, and even though I knew what to expect, the reality is breathtaking. The space is enormous by Venetian standards, the only piazza in the city. All other squares are campos. Only this one earns the title of Piazza. Napoleon called it the finest drawing room in Europe. The square stretches ahead, perhaps 175 meters long and 80 meters wide, surrounded on three sides by arcaded buildings, with the Basilica closing the far end. The ground is paved with geometric patterns in white and grey stone, creating subtle visual interest underfoot. Despite its grandeur, the piazza has an intimate quality in this evening light. The sun is very low now, its rays slanting across the square, illuminating one side while leaving the other in shadow. The contrast creates dramatic effects, the lit portions seeming to glow against the darker areas. The arcaded buildings that surround the square, the Procurati Vecchi on the north and Procurati Nuovi on the south, create a sense of enclosure and unity. Both are three-story structures with continuous arcades at ground level, creating covered walkways lined with elegant shops and historic cafes. These buildings served as residences for the procurators of St. Mark, high officials of the Republic. The windows above are regularly spaced, creating a rhythmic pattern that leads the eye forward toward the Basilica. The buildings are painted in muted colours, pale yellows and creams, allowing the Basilica to dominate visually. And what a dominance it is! The Basilica di San Marco rises at the far end of the square, its facade a stunning mixture of Byzantine, Gothic, and Renaissance elements. 5 domed portals create the ground floor, each one deeply recessed with multiple layers of carved decoration. Above these portals, the facade rises in tiers, decorated with columns, sculptures, and mosaics. The mosaics are incredible, covering large areas of the facade with gold backgrounds and religious imagery. In this light, the gold seems to emit its own light, glowing warm against the darkening sky. These mosaics, created over centuries, represent some of the finest examples of the art form in existence. The 5 domes that crown the Basilica are visible above the facade, their rounded shapes covered in lead that has weathered to a soft grey-green. The Basilica, begun in 1063, was built to house the relics of St. Mark the Evangelist, which Venetian merchants had stolen from Alexandria in 828. At the very top of the facade, Gothic spires and sculptures create an ornate roofline, silhouetted against the sky. The bronze horses that stand above the central portal, replicas of the ancient Greek sculptures that were looted from Constantinople during the Fourth Crusade in 1204, catch the last rays of sun, their forms powerful and graceful. The originals are now protected inside the Basilica, but these replicas serve as a reminder of Venice's role in that controversial crusade. I walk slowly across the piazza towards the Basilica, taking in the details. The facade is so rich with decoration that you could study it for hours and still discover new elements. Columns in different coloured marbles, porphyry and verde antico and cipollino. Carved capitals featuring plants, animals, mythological creatures. Reliefs depicting biblical scenes. To my left stands the Campanile, the bell tower that serves as a landmark visible across the lagoon. This massive brick tower rises nearly 100 metres, topped with a pyramidal spire and a golden statue of the angel Gabriel, acting as weather vane. The tower is simple and elegant, its brick surfaces divided into sections by horizontal bands of white stone. Near the top, arched openings on all four sides house the bells, whose voices ring out over the city to mark the hours and call the faithful to prayer. The shadow of the Campanile stretches long across the piazza, a dark diagonal line that reaches almost to the opposite arcade. In this shadow, the stone pavement is cool and blue, while the areas touched by sun remain warm and golden. The current tower dates from 1912. The original medieval tower dramatically collapsed in 1902, but was rebuilt dov'era com'era, where it was as it was. I walk under the arcades of the Procuratie Nuove, my footsteps echoing slightly in the covered space. The arcade is perhaps 4 meters wide, with a vaulted ceiling supported by columns at regular intervals. The light here is dim and cool, a welcome contrast to the sun-warmed piazza. The shop windows I pass are elegant and refined, befitting the grandeur of their location. One displays fine Venetian glass, goblets and vases in beautiful colours, cobalt blue, ruby red, emerald green, all with elaborate decorative work. Venetian glassmaking, centred on the island of Murano, has been famous since the 13th century. Another window shows fine writing papers and leather-bound journals, traditional products of Venetian craftsmanship. I pass the entrance to Café Florian, one of the oldest coffee houses in continuous operation in the world, having opened in 1720. Through the open door, I can see the interior, a series of small rooms decorated in an ornate 18th century style with mirrors, paintings, and gilded details. A few patrons sit at small round tables, enjoying coffee or aperitifs. A waiter in a white jacket and black bow tie moves between tables with practiced elegance. This café has served everyone from Casanova to Lord Byron, from Charles Dickens to Marcel Proust. I exit the piazza through one of the archways in the Procuratie, entering the maze of calli that fill the area behind San Marco. The contrast is immediate and striking. From the grand open space of the piazza, I'm suddenly in narrow streets where the buildings lean close together overhead. But even here, the buildings maintain an elegance appropriate to this prestigious area. The shops are upscale boutiques and artisan workshops, leather goods, fine fabrics, jewellery, art galleries. Their windows are carefully arranged, often with just a few choice items displayed against simple backgrounds. The light is fading more quickly now, The sun has set, though the sky above still holds light, a deep blue that will gradually darken tonight. Street lamps are beginning to come on, their warm glow creating pools of light in the gathering dusk. I find myself in a particularly narrow calle, where the buildings overhead almost touch. Someone has hung a flower box from a window high above, and trailing geraniums cascade down, their red blooms seeming to glow in the dim light. My wandering brings me to a small canal spanned by an enclosed bridge. This is the famous Bridge of Sighs, the Ponte dei Sospiri, though it looks quite different from this side than in the famous photographs taken from the waterfront. The bridge is Baroque in style, made of white limestone carved with ornate windows covered by stone grills. The structure connects the Doge's palace to the old prison, and legend says it got its name from the sighs of prisoners who would catch their last glimpse of Venice through these windows before imprisonment. The name, however, is a romantic invention from the 19th century. Lord Byron popularised it in his poetry. The bridge was built in 1600 by Antonio Contino. The small canal beneath is very still, its dark water perfectly reflecting the bridge above. The reflection is so clear that it creates a complete oval, the bridge and its mirror image together forming a perfect symmetrical shape. A gondola glides beneath the bridge as I watch, the gondolier standing at the stern, his oar making almost no sound as it cuts the water. Two passengers sit in the felsi, the cabin area, looking up at the bridge as they pass beneath. The gondolier points upward, explaining something to his passengers in Italian, his voice soft in the evening quiet. I walk on, letting my feet choose the path, turning at random down one call or another, crossing bridges, following fondamente beside dark canals. The beauty of Venice is that you can wander without purpose and always find something wonderful. I emerge into a small campo I haven't seen before. It's completely empty at this hour, a perfect square perhaps 15 meters across, bordered by buildings in shades of coral and cream. A single street lamp in the center casts a warm yellow glow. In one corner, a small shrine is set into the wall at about head height. It contains a painted image of the Madonna and Child, protected by a small metal grate. A fresh flower, a red rose, has been placed on the small shelf before the image, a gesture of devotion that touches me deeply. These small shrines, called capitelli, are scattered throughout Venice, silent witnesses to centuries of private prayer. The windows around the campo are mostly dark, though a few show the warm light of interior lamps. I can hear faintly the sound of a television from one apartment, voices speaking Italian. From another window comes the clatter of dishes, someone preparing dinner. This is the Venice I love most, not the grand palazzi or famous monuments, but these quiet residential squares where ordinary life continues as it has for centuries. These are the spaces that give Venice its soul, the backdrop against which generations of Venetians have lived their lives. I find a stone bench against one wall and sit down, simply letting myself be present in this space. The air is cooling now, and I can feel a breeze coming from the lagoon, carrying the faint scent of salt water. Just as I settle onto the bench, a wonderful aroma drifts across the campo from a window above. Someone is cooking dinner, and the smell is absolutely mouth-watering. I can identify the sweet fragrance of onions, slowly caramelizing in butter, becoming golden and tender. Then comes the unmistakable scent of risotto. I can smell the starchy rice, the white wine that's been added to the pan, the rich chicken broth being ladled in bit by bit. The smell grows richer as minutes pass. Now I can detect saffron, that precious spice that gives Venetian risotto its golden colour and distinctive earthy sweet flavour. There's butter too, the final addition that makes risotto creamy and luxurious. I imagine the cook stirring patiently, the constant motion that transforms separate grains of rice into a unified, creamy whole. From another window, a different meal is being prepared. The aroma of roasting meat reaches me, probably lamb with rosemary and garlic. I can smell the herbs crisping in the oven heat, the garlic becoming sweet and mellow, the meat developing a rich, savoury crust. Above, the sky is a deep blue, almost purple with the first stars beginning to appear. The planet Venus hangs in the west, brilliant and steady. Somewhere church bells ring, their tones clear and pure in the still air, their sound seeming to float on the aromatic air. The Campo is utterly peaceful. Even the usual sounds of the city seem muted here. No footsteps, no voices, no boat engines. Just the quiet that descends on Venice in the evening, when tourists have returned to their hotels and locals are home with their families, preparing these wonderful meals whose aromas fill the air with the promise of comfort and satisfaction. I sit for a long time, letting this peace sink into me. There's something about Venice at this hour, something that touches something deep inside. Maybe it's the knowledge of all the history these stones have witnessed, all the lives lived here, all the moments of joy and sorrow, triumph and loss across more than 15 centuries. Or maybe it's simpler than that. Maybe it's just the beauty of the place, the way light falls on stone and water, the way architecture and nature combine to create spaces that feed the soul. Eventually, I rise and begin the walk toward my hotel. My route takes me along quiet fondamonte, over stone bridges, through narrow passages that open unexpectedly into small squares. The city is very quiet now. Most people indoors. As I walk, I'm surrounded by the aromas of evening meals being prepared in apartments above and around me. From one window comes the sweet, sharp smell of tomatoes being roasted with basil and garlic, the tomatoes bursting in the heat and releasing their concentrated, summery essence. The basil adds a peppery, almost licorice-like note that makes my mouth water. From a ground floor kitchen window, I smell something that makes me stop in my tracks. The unmistakable aroma of polenta. Cornmeal simmering slowly in water and butter, being stirred constantly to prevent lumps. The smell is earthy and comforting, with that distinctive corn sweetness. Someone is probably preparing polenta e sci, polenta topped with the tiny grey shrimp caught in the lagoon. The combination is a classic Venetian dish, simple and perfect. I pass a small restaurant, its windows golden with light, the interior warm and inviting. Through the window I can see diners at their tables, friends sharing wine and conversation. Families gathered for evening meals. A waiter navigates between tables carrying a large platter, and I catch a glimpse of sarde in sao, sardines marinated with onions, pine nuts, and raisins in a sweet and sour sauce. The scent of the dish reaches me, the oily richness of the fish, the caramelized onions, the hint of vinegar, all balanced perfectly. The scene is timeless, could be from any era. These meals, these recipes, many have been passed down through generations, each family guarding their specific variations and secrets. This is the food of Venice. Simple ingredients treated with respect. Traditional combinations that have proven their worth over centuries. Flavors that speak of the lagoon and the sea. The water in the canals is dark now, reflecting only the lights from windows and street lamps. The reflections stretch and waver with any slight movement of the water, creating abstract patterns of light and dark. I cross a larger bridge and pause at its crest to look down the canal in both directions. The view in each direction is beautiful in its quietness. Buildings fade into shadow, punctuated by the warm glow of windows and the occasional street lamp. The water lies still and dark, a ribbon of mystery winding between the ancient structures. The water makes soft sounds in the evening quiet. I can hear it lapping gently against the stone walls of the canal, a rhythmic sound like slow breathing. Somewhere nearby, a moored boat rocks in its place, and I hear the gentle creak of rope against wood, the soft bump of the hull against a wooden fender. These are the night sounds of Venice, subtle and soothing. From the houses around me, life continues in warm, lit rooms. Through one window, I see a family gathered around a dining table, their silhouettes moving as they pass dishes and talk. The light from within is golden, probably from a chandelier, and it makes the scene look like a painting by Vermeer, all warmth and domestic peace. Another window shows someone reading in an armchair, a lamp beside them casting a pool of light. I can see bookshelves lining the walls, the spines of hundreds of books visible even from here. As I watch, the person reaches over and picks up a wine glass, taking a sip before returning to their book. The gesture is unhurried, peaceful. From a top-floor apartment, I hear music playing, something classical, perhaps Vivaldi, which seems appropriate since he was born in Venice in 1678 and spent most of his life here. The music drifts down to the canal, mixing with the water sounds and the distant murmur of voices, creating a symphony of evening sounds that is uniquely Venetian. A gondola appears from around a corner, gliding silently down the canal toward me. The gondolier works his oar with fluid grace, his movements economical and precise. No tourists ride in this one. This is a working gondola, perhaps being returned to a boatyard for the night. The gondolier sees me watching from the bridge and nods a greeting, his oar never breaking rhythm. I hear the water parting before the prow, a soft whisper, and then the gentle splash as his oar cuts back through the water on each stroke. The last part of my walk takes me through a narrow calli, barely wider than my shoulders. The buildings rise on both sides, their walls close enough to touch. Above, a narrow strip of sky is visible, now deep blue-black and scattered with stars. My footsteps echo softly in this confined space, a gentle rhythm that's almost meditative. The stone beneath my feet is worn smooth in the center of the path, slightly rougher at the edges, step after step after step, each one a small act of presence, of being here now in this ancient city built on water and dreams. From somewhere above, I hear a window being closed for the night, the wooden shutters creaking slightly as they swing shut, then the click of the latch being fastened. A cat meows from a window sill, then is answered by another cat somewhere in the darkness. These small domestic sounds are comforting, reminders that life continues its ancient patterns here. The calli opens suddenly, and I find myself on a quiet fondamenta beside a small canal. And there, just ahead, is my hotel, a converted palazzo with warm light glowing from its windows. The building is painted a soft butter yellow, its facade elegant but understated, with green shutters and window boxes filled with trailing ivy. The reflection of the hotel shimmers on the water's surface, doubling its welcoming light. I can see the ripples in the canal creating gentle distortions in the reflection, making it seem to dance and waver. A small wooden door, painted deep blue and studded with brass nails, serves as the entrance. Above it, a discreet brass plaque bears the hotel's name. A lantern beside the door casts a welcoming pool of golden light that spills onto the fondamenta and reflects off the canal water. As I approach, I catch the scent of jasmine. Someone, either at the hotel or in a nearby garden, has jasmine growing, and its perfume is strongest now in the cool evening air. The scent is sweet, but not overwhelming, delicate and romantic, mixing with the ever-present smell of the canal water. That particular Venetian smell of salt and stone and ancient wood. I cross the small bridge that leads to the hotel entrance and pause for a moment, turning back to look at the canal. The water is perfectly still now, a dark mirror reflecting the lights from windows and the stars above. The reflection creates a doubled world, equally real, equally beautiful. I can hear the gentle lap of water against stone, that quintessential Venetian sound that will become the soundtrack to my dreams tonight. It's rhythmic and soothing, like a heartbeat or like breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a gondolier calls out as he navigates a turn, his voice echoing off the walls before fading into silence. The sound carries clearly in the still night air, seeming both near and far at once. I turn and push open the blue door, and it moves smoothly on well-oiled hinges. The door is heavy, solid wood, and my hand wraps around the brass handle, which is worn smooth and warm from countless touches. I step inside, and the door closes behind me with a soft, substantial sound sealing out the night. The interior is warm and inviting, with terracotta tile floors that feel solid beneath my feet. Each tile is slightly different in shade, creating a subtle pattern of warm browns and oranges. The walls are cream-coloured with exposed wooden beams crossing the ceiling, their dark wood polished to a soft sheen. A small reception desk sits to one side, unattended at this late hour, but with a small lamp burning and a handwritten note in Italian welcoming late arrivals. Next to it sits a brass bowl filled with hard candies wrapped in coloured paper and a vase holding fresh flowers. Roses, their petals soft pink and cream, their scent delicate in the quiet lobby. A staircase with an elegant iron railing curves upward, leading to the guest rooms above. The railing is wrought iron, painted black, with decorative scrollwork that creates flowing patterns. I place my hand on the smooth wooden handrail as I begin to climb. It's been polished by generations of hands, worn into a perfect grip. I climb the stairs slowly, savouring each step. My hand slides along the smooth wooden handrail, which is cool under my palm. My footsteps are soft on the carpeted treads, The carpet is old but well maintained, a deep burgundy colour with a subtle pattern of leaves and vines woven into it. The stairwell is lit by wall sconces that cast a gentle glow, their light reflecting off small mirrors hung at intervals along the walls. The mirrors are antique, their glass slightly wavery, distorting reflections in interesting ways. As I pass each one, I catch fragmentary glimpses of myself, of the stairwell, of the light and shadow. The hallway on my floor is quiet, lit by similar wall sconces that create pools of warm light. The walls here are papered in a silk damask pattern, cream on cream, subtle and elegant. The floor is wooden, old boards that creak very slightly under my feet, a sound that speaks of age and character rather than disrepair. I reach my room and unlock the door with an actual key, a heavy brass thing that feels substantial in my hand. The lock turns with a solid, satisfying click, and the door swings open. Stepping inside, the room welcomes me with its quiet charm. The space smells faintly of lavender and clean linen, with an undertone of old wood and the particular scent of aged buildings. Not musty, but rather the pleasant smell of time itself. The room is simple, but beautiful, furnished with antique pieces that speak of Venice's long history. The floor is wooden, the boards dark with age and polished to a soft glow. A beautiful rug covers the center of the floor. Its pattern faded but still lovely, showing flowers and vines in soft colors: dusty rose, sage green, pale gold. A large bed with a carved wooden headboard dominates the space. The headboard is walnut, I think, carved with a simple but elegant pattern of scrolling leaves. I run my hand over it. The carving is smooth and precise, the wood cool and solid. The bed is made up with crisp white linens and a quilted coverlet in soft blue. I press my hand against the mattress. It's perfectly firm but with just enough give, promising a good night's sleep. Two tall windows look out over the canal, their wooden frames painted white, their glass old and slightly wavy. The shutters are open to the night, folded back against the interior walls. I cross to the windows, my feet quiet on the wooden floor, and then muffled by the rug. The windows open inward, and I unfasten one and swing it wide. Cool evening air flows in, carrying the scent of water and stone. I lean on the windowsill, feeling the slightly rough texture of the painted wood under my forearms, still warm from the day's sun. The view is magical. The canal stretches away in both directions, its dark water reflecting the lights from buildings on both sides. The reflections are perfect, creating long columns of gold and amber that waver slightly with any movement of the water. A small bridge arches across the water just to my left, its stone pale in the moonlight that has begun to silver the scene, turning everything it touches into shades of blue and silver and grey. I step back from the window and begin to prepare for bed. I change into comfortable night clothes, wash my face in the small bathroom with its beautiful tilework and antique fixtures. The water is cool and refreshing, washing away the pleasant tiredness from my long walk. I turn down the covers on the bed and slip between the sheets. The linens are cool and smooth, freshly laundered and scented faintly with lavender. The mattress is perfectly comfortable, cradling my tired body. I reach over and turn off the bedside lamp, leaving only the light from the windows. Moonlight and the reflected glow from the city create a soft illumination that's peaceful rather than intrusive. Lying back on the pillows, I gaze at the ceiling, where the light reflecting off the canal water creates gentle, moving patterns. The water outside creates ripples, and these ripples catch light and throw it upward, creating a constant, subtle dance of light and shadow across the ceiling. This is a uniquely Venetian sight, the play of waterlight, that has soothed countless sleepers over the centuries. I can hear the sounds of Venice settling into the night, the gentle lap of water against stone, constant and rhythmic like a lullaby. The distant sound of footsteps on a bridge, growing closer, then fading away. The soft call of a bird from somewhere across the rooftops. There is so much more to see, so much more to discover. But for now, there is only this moment. This comfortable bed, this beautiful room, this magical city settling into peaceful sleep around me. My eyes grow heavy. The patterns of light on the ceiling become softer, more dreamlike. The sound of water becomes the rhythm of my breathing, slow and deep and steady. I let go of the day, let go of everything except this moment of perfect peace. Venice cradles me in her ancient arms, this city that has welcomed travellers for 1,500 years, offering them beauty, wonder, and the deep comfort of a place where time moves differently, where the modern world feels far away, where magic still lives in every stone and every reflection. And as I slip into sleep, my last conscious thought is one of gratitude. Gratitude for this day, for this walk, for this city, for the privilege of being here now in Venice. Rest now. Sleep deeply. Dream beautifully. Tomorrow Venice will still be here waiting to be explored, waiting to share more secrets, waiting to work her magic once again. Good night from Venice. Buonanotte.